The second book of Samuel, chapter 1. It says, after the death of Saul, when David had returned from striking down the Amalekites, David remained 2 days in Ziklag. And on the third day, behold, a man came from Saul's camp with his clothes torn and dirt on his head. And when he came to David, he fell to the ground and paid homage. And David said to him, where do you come from? And he said, I have escaped from the camp of Israel. And David said to him, how did it go? Tell me. And he answered, the people fled from the battle, and also many of the people have fallen and are dead. And Saul and his son Jonathan are also dead. Then David said to the young man who told him, how do you know that Saul and his son Jonathan are dead? And the young man told him, by chance I happened to be on Mount Gilboa, and there was Saul leaning on his spear. And behold, the chariots and the horsemen were close upon him. And when he looked behind him, he saw me and called to me. And I answered, here I am. And he said to me, who are you? I answered him, I am an Amalekite. And he said to me, stand beside me and kill me, for anguish has seized me, and yet my life still lingers. So I stood beside him and killed him, because I was sure that he could not live after he had fallen. And I took the crown that was on his head and the armlet that was on his arm, and I have brought them here to my lord. Then David took hold of his clothes and tore them, and so did all the men who were with him. And they mourned and wept and fasted until evening for Saul and for Jonathan his son, and for the people of the Lord, and for the house of Israel, because they had fallen by the sword. And David said to the young man who told him, where do you come from? And he answered, I am the son of a sojourner, an Amalekite. And David said to him, how is it that you were not afraid to put your hand to destroy the Lord's anointed? Then David called one of the young men and said, go, execute him. And he struck him down so that he died. And David said to him, your blood be on your head, for your own mouth has testified against you, saying, I have killed the Lord's anointed. And David lamented with this lamentation over Saul and Jonathan his son, and he said it should be taught to the people of Judah. Behold, it is written in the book of Jasher, he said, your glory, O Israel, is slain on your high places. How the mighty have fallen. Tell it not in Gath, publish it not in the streets of Ashkelon, lest the daughters of the Philistines rejoice, lest the daughters of the uncircumcised exult. You mountains of Gilboa, let there be no dew or rain upon you, nor fields of offerings. For there the shield of the mighty was defiled, the shield of Saul not anointed with oil. From the blood of the slain, from the fat of the mighty, the bow of Jonathan turned not back, and the sword of Saul returned not empty. Saul and Jonathan, beloved and lovely, in life and in death they were not divided. They were swifter than eagles, they were stronger than lions. You daughters of Israel, weep over Saul, who clothed you luxuriously in scarlet, who put ornaments of gold on your apparel. How the mighty have fallen in the midst of the battle. Jonathan lies slain on the high places. I am distressed for you, my brother Jonathan. Very pleasant have you been to me. Your love to me was extraordinary, surpassing the love of women. How the mighty have fallen, and the weapons of war perished.
Chapter 2. And it came to pass after this that David inquired of his Lord, saying, shall I go up into any of the cities of Judah? And the Lord said unto him, go up. And David said, whither shall I go up? And he said unto Hebron. So David went up thither, and his 2 wives also, Ahinoam the Jezreelitess, and Abigail, Nabal's wife, the Carmelite. And his men that were with him did David bring up, every man with his household, and they dwelt in the cities of Hebron. And the men of Judah came, and there they anointed David king over the house of Judah. And they told David, saying, that the men of Jabesh Gilead were they that buried Saul. And David sent messengers unto the men of Jabesh Gilead, and said unto them, Blessed be ye of the Lord, that ye have shewed this kindness unto your Lord, even unto Saul, and have buried him. And now the Lord show kindness and truth unto you, and I also would requite you this kindness, because ye have done this thing. Therefore now let your hands be strengthened, and be ye valiant. For your master Saul is dead, and also the house of Judah have anointed me king over them. But Abner the son of Ner, captain of Saul's host, took Ishbosheth, the son of Saul, and brought him over to Mahanaim, and made him king over Gilead, and over the Ashurites, and over Jezreel, and over Ephraim, and over Benjamin, and over all Israel. Ishbosheth, Saul's son, was 40 years old when he began to reign over Israel, and reigned 2 years, but the house of Judah followed David. And the time that David was king in Hebron over the house of Judah was 7 years and 6 months. And Abner the son of Ner and the servants of Ishbosheth the son of Saul went out from Mahanaim to Gibeon. And Joab the son of Zeruiah and the servants of David went out and met together by the pool of Gibeon. And they sat down, and the one on the one side of the pool, and the other on the other side of the pool. And Abner said to Joab, Let the young men now arise and play before us. And Joab said, Let them arise. Then they arose and went over by number 12 of Benjamin, which pertained to Ishbosheth, the son of Saul, and 12 of the servants of David. And they caught every one his fellow by the head, and thrust his sword in his fellow's side. So they fell down together, wherefore that place was called Hekath Hazurim, which is in Gibeon. And there was a very sore battle that day, and Abner was beaten, and the men of Israel before the servants of David. And there were 3 sons of Zeruiah there, Joab, and Abishai, and Asahel. And Asahel was the light of foot, as a wild roe. And Asahel pursued after Abner, and in going he turned not to the right hand, nor to the left from following Abner. Then Abner looked. He looked behind him and said, Art thou Asahel? And he said, I am. And Abner said to him, Turn thee aside to thy right hand, or to thy left, and lay thee hold on one of the young men, and take thee his armor. But Asahel would not turn aside from following of him. And Abner said again to Asahel, Turn thee aside from following me, wherefore should I smite thee to the ground? How then should I hold up my face to Joab thy brother? Howbeit he refused to turn aside. Wherefore Abner with the hinder end of his spear smote him under the 5th rib, that the spear came out behind him. And he fell down there and died in the same place. And it came to pass that as many as came to the place where Asahel fell down and died stood still. Joab also and Abishai pursued after Abner. And the sun went down when they were come to the hill of Ammah, that lieth before Giah, by the way of the wilderness of Gibeon. And the children of Benjamin gathered themselves together after Abner, and became one troop, and stood on the top of an hill. Then Abner called to Joab and said, Shall the sword devour forever? Knowest thou not that it will be bitterness in the latter end? How long shall it be then, art thou hid the people return? Art thou hid the people return from following their brethren? And Joab said, As God liveth, unless thou hast spoken, surely then in the morning the people had gone up every one from following his brother. So Joab blew a trumpet, and all the people stood still, and pursued after Israel no more, neither fought they any more. And Abner and his men walked all that night through the plain, and passed over Jordan, and went through all Bithron, and they came to Mahanaim. And Joab returned from following Abner. And when he had gathered all the people together, there lacked of David's servants 19 men and Asahel. But the servants of David had smitten of Benjamin and of Abner's men, so that 360 men died. And they took up Asahel, and buried him in the sepulchre of his father, which was in Bethlehem. And Joab and his men went all night, and they came to Hebron at break of day.
Chapter 3. Now there was a long war between the house of Saul and house of David. But David grew stronger and stronger, and the house of Saul grew weaker and weaker. Sons were born to David in Hebron, his firstborn Ammon by Ahinoam the Jezreel, his second Chileab by Abigail, the widow of Nahab the Carmelite, the third Absalom, the son of Maacah, the daughter of Talmai, king of Geshur, the fourth Adonijah, the son of Agath, the fifth Shaphat, the son of Abital, and the sixth Itream by David's wife Egal. They were born to David in Hebron. Now it was so, while there was war between the house of Saul and the house of David, that Abner was strengthening his hold on the house of Saul. And Saul had a concubine whose name was Ribsah, the daughter of Ahai. So Ishbosheth said to Abner, Why have you gone into my father's concubine? Then Abner became angry at the word of Ishbosheth and said, Am I a dog's egg that belonged to Judah? Today I show loyalty to the house of Saul your father, to his brother and to his friend, and have not delivered you into the hand of David. And you charge me today with the fault concerning this woman? May God do so through Abner, and more also, if I do not do for David, as the Lord has sworn to him, to transfer the kingdom from the house of Saul and set up the throne of David over Israel and over Judah, from Dan to Beersheba. And he could not answer Abner another word, because he feared him. Then Abner sent messengers on his behalf to David, saying, Whose is the land? Saying also, Make your covenant with me, and indeed my hand shall be with you to bring all Israel to you. And David said, Good, I will make a covenant with you, but one thing I require of you. You shall not see my face unless you first bring Micah, son's daughter, when you come to see my face. So David sent messenger to Ishbosheth, Saul's sons, saying, Give me my wife Micah, whose I betrothed to myself for 100 foreskin of Philistine. And Ishbosheth sent and took her from her husband, from Peter, the son of Laish. Then her husband went along with her to Bahurim, weeping behind her. So Abner said to him, Go, return, and he returned. Now Abner had communicated with the elders of Israel, saying, In time past, you were seeking for David to be king over you. Now then, do it. For the Lord has spoken of David, saying, By the hand of my servant, I will save my people Israel from the hand of the Philistine. and the hand of all their enemy. And Abner also spoke in the hearing of the Benjamin. Then Abner also went to speak in the hearing of David in Hebron, all that seemed good to Israel and the whole house of Benjamin. So Abner and 20 men with him came to David at Hebron, and David made a feast for Abner and the men who were with him. Then Abner said to David, "I will arise and go, and gather all Israel to my lord the king, that they may make a covenant with you, and that you may reign over all that your heart desires." So David sent Abner away, and he went in peace. At that moment, the servants of David and Joab came from a raid and brought more spoil with them. But Abner was not with David in the Hebron, for he had sent him away, and he had gone in peace. When Joab and all the troops that were with him had come, they told Joab, saying, "Abner the son of Ner came to the king, and he sent him away, and he has gone in peace." Then Joab came to the king and said, "What have you done? Look, Abner came to you. Why is it that you sent him away, and he has already gone? Surely you realize that Abner the son of Ner came to deceive you, to know you're going out and you're coming in, and to know all that you are doing." And when Joab had gone from David's presence, he sent messengers after Abner, who brought him back from the well of Shirah. But David did not know it. Now when Abner had returned to Hebron, Joab took him aside in the gate to speak with him privately, and there stabbed him in the stomach, so that he died for the blood of Achel, his brother. Afterward, when David heard it, he said, "My kingdom and her are guiltless before the Lord forever, of the blood of Abner the son of Ner. Let it rest on the head of Joab and all his father's house, and let there never fail to be in the house of Joab one who has discharged or is leper, who lean on a staff or fall by sword, or who lack bread." So Joab and Abishai, his brother, killed Abner, because he had killed their brother Achel at Gibeon in the battle. Then David said to Joab, to all the people who were with him, "Tear your cloth, clothe yourself with sackcloth, and mourn for Abner." King David followed the coffin. So they buried Abner in Hebron. And the king lifted up his voice and wept at the grave of Abner, and all people wept. And the king sang lamented over Abner and said, "Should Abner die as a fool dies? Your hand were not bound, nor your foot put into fetters. As a man fall before wicked men, so you fell." And all the men wept over him again. And when all the people came to persuade David to eat food while it was still day, David took an oath, saying, "God do so to me, and more also, if I taste bread or anything else till the sun goes down." Now all the people took note of it, and it pleased them. Since whatever the king did, pleased all the people. For all the people and all Israel understood that day that he had not been the king intent to kill Abner, the son of Ner. Then the king said to his servant, "Do you not know a prince? Do you not know that a prince and a great man has fallen this day in Israel? And I am weak today, though anointed king. And this man and the son of Zeruiah are too harsh for men. The Lord shall repay the evildoer according to his wickedness."
2 Samuel chapter 4. When Ishbosheth, Saul's son, heard that Abner had died at Hebron, his courage failed, and all Israel was dismayed. Now Saul's son had 2 men who were captains of raiding bands, The name of the one was Bana, and the name of the other Rechab, sons of Rimmon, a man of Benjamin from Beeroth. For Beeroth also is counted part of Benjamin. The Beerothites fled to Gittam and have been sojourners there to this day. Jonathan, the son of Saul, had a son who was crippled in his feet. He was 5 years old when the news about Saul and Jonathan came from Jezreel, and his nurse took him up and fled. And as she fled in her haste, he fell and became lame, and his name was Mephibosheth. Now the sons of Rimmon, the Beerothite, Rechab and Bana, set out, and about the heat of the day, they came to the house of Ishbosheth, and he was taking his noonday rest. And they came into the midst of the house as if to get to eat, and they stabbed him in the stomach. Then Rechab and Bana, his brother, escaped. When they came into the house, as he lay on his bed in his bedroom, they struck him and put him to death and beheaded him. They took his head and went by the way of Arabah all night and brought the head of Ishbosheth to David at Hebron. And they said to the king, "Here is the head of Ishbosheth, the son of Saul, your enemy who sought your life. The Lord has avenged my lord the king this day on Saul and on his offspring." But David answered Rechab and Bana, his brother, the sons of Rimmon, the Beerothite, "As the Lord lives, who has redeemed my life out of every adversity, when one told me, 'Behold, Saul is dead,' and thought he was bringing good news, I seized him and killed him at Ziklag, which was the reward I gave him for his sons. How much more when wicked men have killed a righteous man in his own house on his bed? Shall I not now require his blood at your hand and destroy you from the earth?" And David commanded his young men, and they killed them and cut off their hands and feet and hanged them beside the pool at Hebron. But they took the head of Ishbosheth and buried it in the tomb of Abner and at Hebron.
Samuel chapter 5. I'm going to read it in Sepedi. Samuel wa bobedi, karolo ya botlhano. Dikgoro ka moka tša Israele tša go tla Dafita kua Hebron tša re go yena, "Re madi eno, mehleng ye e fetilego le mola Saulo e sa le kgoši ya rena, o be o eta Baisraele pele ntweng. Morena o rile go wena, ke wena o swanetšego go diša setšhaba sa ka sa Israele, ke wena o swanetšego go ba mmuši wa sona. Ka gona baetapele ka moka ba Israele ba tla go kgoši Dafita kua Hebron. Yena a dira kgwerano le bona pele ga morena, ba mo tloša gomme ya ba kgoši ya Israele. Dafita o be a na le mengwaga ye 30 ge e ba kgoši, gomme o buša mengwaga ye 40. O bušitše Juda a le Hebron mengwaga ye šupago le seripa, gomme a buša Israele ka moka le Juda a le Jerusalema mengwaga ye 30 a metšo ye meraro. Kgoši Dafita le banna ba gagwe ba ile ba tšwa dira ba yo hlasela Jerusalema. Ba Jebusi bao ba bego ba dula moo ba gopola gore Dafita a ka se kgone go thupa motse woo, ka gona ba re go yena, "O ka se tsene ka moo, le tšona difofu le digole di tla go thibela." Eupša Dafita o ile a thoba sebo sa bona sa Sion, gomme sa tsebja ka la motse wa Dafita. Tšatši leo Dafita a re go banna ba gagwe, yo mongwe le yo mongwe yo a nyakago go hlasela ba Jebusi a tsene ka nthuba ya meetse, a bolaye digole le difofu tšeo Dafita a di tlhoilego tlhoitlhoši. Ke ka fao go tlhagilego seka se se rego difofu le digole di ka se tsene ngwakong wa morena. Ka morago ga go thupa sebo, Dafita o ile a dula ka go sona, mme a se rea leina la motse wa Dafita, a aga motse go se potologa, a thoma felo mo naga e bego e lekelelantšhitšwe a aga go ya ka gare. Maatla a gagwe a ile a fela a oketšega ka gobane morena modimo ramaatla ohle o be a na le yena. Kgoši Hiramo wa Tirosi o ile a roma batseta gore ba kwane le Dafita, a mo romela dikota tša mosetere le babetli go tee le babetli ba matlapa gore a ikagele ka gona Dafita a lemoga gore morena o mo tiišeditše bogošing bja Israele le gore o atlegiša mmušo wa gage ka lebaka la setšhaba sa morena sa Israele. Ge Dafita a tlogile Hebron a ile Jerusalema, o ile a tšea metlabo ye mengwe le basadi fao, gomme a ba le barwa le barwedi ba bangwe. Mo Jerusalema a belegelwa bana ba ba latelago Shamua, Shobabe, Nathane, Solomoni, Jibehara, Elishua, Nefege, Jafia, Elishama, Eliada le Elifelete. Dafita o fenya Bafilisita. Dafita ba ile ba botswa gore Bafilisita ba ile ba botswa gore Dafita o tloditšwe ya ba kgoši ya Israele. Ka gona madira a bona a tswa go yo mothopa. Ge Dafita a ekwa taba yeo, a theogela sebo. Bafilisita ba fihla molaleng wa Barafa, gomme ba ipeakanyetša ntwa moo. Dafita a botšiša morena a re, a ke tlhasele Bafilisita, a o tla ba gafela diatleng tšaka? Morena a mo fetola a re, ee, ba tlhasele, ruri ke tla ba gafela diatleng tša gago. Ka gona Dafita a ya Baale Peratsime, gomme moo a fenya Bafilisita a re, morena o gopotše manaba a ka bjalo ka lefula. Ka fao filo moo go bitswa Baale Peratsime. Ge Bafilisita ba tšhaba ba ile ba tlogela medimo ya bona ya ditshwantšho, gomme Dafita le banna ba gagwe ba e tšea. Bafilisita ba goma ba ya molaleng wa Barafa, mme ba ipeakanyetša ntwa gape moo. Gape Dafita a botšiša morena yo a ilego a mo fetola a re, o seke wa ba tlhasela o le mo, fela o ba pote ka morago, mme o itukišetše go ba tlhasela o le kua mehlareng ya megopogopha. Ge o ekwa mešito godimo ga mehla, gona o tlhasele ka bjako, ka gobane ke tla be ke go etile pele go yo fenya madira a Bafilisita. Dafita a dira se morena a molaetše go sona, gomme a rakediša Bafilisita go tloga Geba go yo fihla Gesere.
2 Samuel 6. David again gathered all the chosen men of Israel, 30,000. David and all the people with him set out and went from Baal-Judah to bring up from there the ark of God, which is called by the name of the Lord of hosts, who is enthroned on the cherubim. They carried the ark of God on a new cart and brought it out of the house of Abinadab, which was on the hill. Uzzah and Io, the sons of Abinadab, were driving the new cart with the ark of God, and Ahio went out from in front of the ark. And David and all the house of Israel were dancing before the Lord with all their might, with songs and lyres and harps, and tambourines and castanets and cymbals. When they came to the threshing floor of Nacon, Uzzah reached out his hand to the ark of God and took hold of it, for the oxen had lurched. The anger of the Lord was kindled against Uzzah, and God struck him there, and he died there beside the ark of God. David was angry because the Lord had burst forth with an outburst upon Uzzah, so that place is called Perez Uzzah to this day. David was afraid of the Lord that day. He said, How can the ark of the Lord come into my care? So David was unwilling to take the ark of the Lord into his care in the city of David. Instead, David took it to the house of Obed-Edom the Gittite. The ark of the Lord The ark of the Lord remained in the house of Obed-Edom the Gittite for 3 months, and the Lord blessed Obed-Edom and all his household. It was told King David, "The Lord has blessed the household of Obed-Edom and all that belongs to him, because the ark of God." So David went and brought up the ark of God from the house of Obed-Edom to the city of David with rejoicing. And when all those who bore the ark of the Lord had gone 6 paces, he sacrificed an ox and a fatted calf. David danced before the Lord with all his might. David was girded with a linen ephod. So David and all the house of Israel brought up the ark of the Lord with shouting and with the sound of the trumpet. As the ark of the Lord came into the city of David, Michal, daughter of Saul, looked out of the window and saw King David leaping and dancing before the Lord, and she despised him in her heart. They brought the ark of the Lord and set it in its place, inside the tent that David had pitched for it. David offered burnt offerings and offerings of well-being before the Lord. When David had finished offering the burnt offerings and the offerings of well-being, he blessed the people in the name of the Lord of hosts, distributed food among the people, the whole multitude of Israel, both men and women, to each a cake of bread, a portion of meat, and a cake of raisins. Then all the people went back to their homes. David returned to bless his household, but Michal, the daughter of Saul, came out to meet David and said, "How the king of Israel honored himself today, uncovering himself today before the eyes of his servants' maids, as any vulgar fellow might shamelessly uncover himself." David said to Michal, "It was before the Lord who chose me in place of your father and all his household to appoint me as a prince over Israel, the people of the Lord. I will dance before the Lord. I will make myself yet more contemptible than this. I will be humbled in my own eyes, but by the maids of whom you have spoken, by them I shall be held in honor." And Michal, the daughter of Saul, had no child to the day of her death.
Chapter 7. Now when the king was settled in his house, and the Lord had given him rest from all his enemies around him, the king said to the prophet Nathan, "See now, I am living in a house of cedar, but the ark of God stays in a tent." Nathan said to the king, "Go, do all that you have in mind, for the Lord is with you." But that same night, the word of the Lord came to Nathan. "Go and tell my servant David, thus says the Lord, are you the one to build me a house to live in? I have not lived in a house since the day I brought up the house of Israel from Egypt till this day, but I have been moving about in a tent and a tabernacle. Wherever I have moved about amongst all the people of Israel, did I speak a word with any of the tribal leaders of Israel, whom I commanded to shepherd my people Israel, saying, why have you not built me a house of cedar? Now therefore, thus you shall say to my servant David, thus says the Lord of hosts, I took you from the pastures, from following the sheep, to be prince over my people Israel. And I have been with you wherever you went, and have cut off all your enemies from before you. And I will make for you a great name, like the name of the great ones of the earth. And I will appoint a place for my people Israel, and will plant them so that they may live in their own place, and be disturbed no more, and evildoers shall afflict them no more, as formerly, from the time that I appointed judges over my people Israel. And I will give you rest from all your enemies. Moreover, the Lord declares to you that the Lord will make you a house. When your days are fulfilled and you lie down with your ancestors, I will raise up your offsprings after you, who shall come forth from your body, and I will establish his kingdom. He shall build a house for my name, and I will establish the throne of his kingdom forever. I will be a father to him, and he shall be a son to me. When he commits iniquities, I will punish him with a rod, such as the mortal use, with rod afflicted by human beings. But I will not take my steadfast love from him, as I took it from Saul, whom I put away before you. Your house and your kingdom shall be made sure forever before me. Your throne shall be established forever. In accordance with all these words and with all this vision, Nathan spoke to David. Then King David went in and sat before the Lord and said, Who am I, O Lord God? What is my house that you have brought me thus far? And yet this was a small thing in your eyes. O Lord God, you have spoken also of your servant's house for a great while to come. May this be instructions for the people. O Lord God, and what more can David say to you? For you know your servant, O Lord God, because of your promise and according to your own heart, you have wrought all this greatness so that your servant may know it. Therefore you are great, O Lord God, for there is no one like you, and there is no God beside you, according to all that we have heard with our ears. Who is like you? Who is like your people, like Israel? Is there another nation on earth whom God went to redeem it as people, and to make a name for himself, doing great and awesome things for them, by driving out before his people nations and their gods? And you established your people Israel for yourself, to be your people forever. And you, O Lord, became their God. And now, O Lord God, as for the word that you have spoken concerning your servant and concerning his house, confirm it forever. Do as you have promised. Thus your name will be magnified forever in the saying, The Lord of hosts is God over Israel, and the house of your servant David will be established before you. For you, O Lord of hosts, the God of Israel, has made this revelation to your servant, saying, I will build you a house. I will build you a house. Therefore your servant has found courage to pray this prayer to you. And now, O Lord God, you are God, and your words are true, and you have promised this good thing to your servant. Now therefore, may it please you to bless the house of your servant, so that it may continue forever before you. For you, O Lord God, have spoken, and with your blessing shall the house of your servant be blessed forever. Amen.
Chapter 8. In the course of time, David defeated the Philistines and subdued them, and he took Metheg Ammah from the control of the Philistines. David also defeated the Moabites. He made them lie down on the ground and measured them off with a length of cord. Every 2 lengths of them were put to death, and the 3rd length was allowed to live. So the Moabites became subject to David and brought tribute. Moreover, David fought Hadadezer, son of Rehob, king of Zobah, when he went to restore his control along the Euphrates River. David captured 1,000 of his chariots, 7,000 charioteers, and 20,000 foot soldiers. He hamstrung all but 100 of all the chariot horses. When the Arameans of Damascus came to help Hadadezer, king of Zobah, David struck down 22,000 of them. He put garrisons in the Aramean kingdom of Damascus, and the Arameans became subject to him and brought tribute. The Lord gave David victory wherever he went. David took the gold shields that belonged to the officers of Hadadezer and brought them to Jerusalem. From Tebah and Berothai, towns that belonged to Hadadezer, King David took a great quantity of bronze. When too, king of Hamath, heard that David had defeated the entire army of Hadadezer, he sent his son Joram to King David to greet him and congratulate him on his victory in battle over Hadadezer, who had been at war with two. Joram brought with him articles of silver and gold and bronze. King David dedicated these articles to the Lord, as he had done with the silver and gold from all the nations he had subdued: Edom and Moab, the Ammonites and the Philistines and Amalek. He also dedicated the plunder taken from Hadadezer, son of Rehob, king of Zobah. And David became famous after he returned from striking down 18,000 Edomites in the Valley of Salt. He put garrisons throughout Edom, and all the Edomites became subject to David. The Lord gave David victory wherever he went. David reigned over all Israel, doing what was just and right for all his people. Joab, son of Zeruiah, was over the army. Jehoshaphat, son of Ahilud, was recorder. Zadok, son of Ahitub, and Ahimelech, son of Abiathar, were priests. Sariah was secretary. Benaniah, son of Jehoiada, was over the Kerethites and Pelethites, and David's sons were royal advisors.
Chapter 9. Now David said, "Is there still anyone who is left of the house of Saul, that I may show him kindness for Jonathan's sake?" And there was a servant of the house of Saul, whose name was Ziba. So when they had called him to David, the king said to him, "Are you Ziba?" He said, "At your service." Then the king said, "Is there not still someone of the house of Saul to whom I may show the kindness of God?" And Ziba said to the king, "There is still a son of Jonathan who is lame in his feet." So the king said to him, "Where is he?" And Ziba said to the king, "Indeed, he's in the house of Machir, the son of Amiel, in Lo-debar." Then King David sent and brought him out of the house of Machir, the son of Amiel, from Lo-debar. Now, when Mephibosheth, the son of Jonathan, the son of Saul, had come to David, he fell on his face and prostrated himself. Then David said, "Mephibosheth?" And he answered, "Here is your servant." So David said to him, "Do not fear, for I will surely show you kindness for Jonathan, your father's sake, and will restore to you all the land of Saul, your grandfather, and you shall eat bread at my table continually." Then he bowed himself and said, "What is your servant, that you should look upon such a dead dog as I?" And the king called to Ziba, Saul's servant, and said to him, "I have given to your master's son all that belongs to Saul and to all his house. You therefore and your sons and your servants shall work the land for him, and you shall bring in the harvest, that your master's son may have food to eat. But Mephibosheth, your master's son, shall eat bread at my table always." Now Ziba had 15 sons and 20 servants. Then Ziba said to the king, "According to all that my lord the king has commanded his servant, so will your servant do." As for Mephibosheth, said the king, "he shall eat at my table, one of the king's sons." Mephibosheth had a young son whose name was Micah, and all who dwelt in the house of Ziba were servants of Mephibosheth. So Mephibosheth dwelt in Jerusalem, for he ate continually at the king's table, and he was lame in both his feet.
Chapter 10. Sometime later, King Nahash of Ammon died, and his son Hanun became king. King David said, "I must show loyal friendship to Hanun." as his father Nahash did to me. So David sent messengers to express his sympathy. When they arrived in Ammon, the Ammonite leaders said to the king, "Do you think that it is in your father's honor that David has sent these men to express sympathy to you? Of course not. He has sent them here as spies to explore the city so that he can conquer us." Hanun seized David's messengers, shaved off one side of their beards, cut off their clothes at the hips, and sent them away. They were too ashamed to return home. When David heard about what had happened, he sent word that they should stay in Jericho and not return until their beards had grown again. The Ammonites realized that they had made David their enemy, so they hired 20,000 Syrian soldiers from Bethrob and Zuba, 12,000 men from Tob, and the king of Maachah with 1,000 men. David heard of it and sent Joab against them with a whole army. The Ammonites marched out and took up their position at the entrance to Rova, their capital city, while the others, both the Syrians and the men from Tob and Maachah, took up their position in the open countryside. Joab saw that the enemy troops would attack him in front and from the rear, so he chose the best of Israel's soldiers and put them in position facing the Syrians. He placed the rest of his troops under the command of his brother Abishai, who put them in positions facing the Ammonites. Joab said to him, "If you see that the Syrians are defeating me, come and help me, and if the Ammonites are defeating you, I will go and help you. Be strong and courageous. Let's fight hard for our people and for the cities of our God, and may the Lord's will be done." Joab and his men advanced to attack, and the Syrians fled. When the Ammonites saw the Syrians running away, they fled from Abishai and retreated into the city. Then Joab turned back from fighting the Ammonites and went back to Jerusalem. The Syrians realized that they had been defeated by the Israelites, so they called all their troops together. King Hadaziah sent for the Syrians, who were on the east side of the river Euphrates, and they came to Helam under the command of Shobach, commander of the army of King Hadaziah of Zobah. When David heard of it, he gathered the Israelite troops, crossed the river Jordan, and marched to Helam, where the Syrians took up their position facing him. The fighting began, and the Israelites drove the Syrian army back. David and his men killed 700 Syrian chariot drivers and 40,000 horsemen, and they wounded Shobach, the enemy commander, who died on the battlefield. When the kings who were subject to Hadaziah realized that they had been defeated by the Israelites, they made peace with them and became their subjects. And the Syrians were afraid to help the Ammonites more. Amen.
Chapter 11. In the spring, at the time when kings go off to war, David sent Joab out with the king's men and the whole Israelite army. They destroyed the Ammonites and besieged Rabbah, but David remained in Jerusalem. One evening, David got up from his bed and walked around on the roof of the palace. From the roof, he saw a woman bathing. The woman was very beautiful, and David sent someone to find out about her. The man said, "She is Bathsheba, the daughter of Eliam and the wife of Uriah the Hittite." Then David sent messengers to get her. She came to him, and he slept with her. Now she was purifying herself from her monthly uncleanness. Then she went back home. The woman conceived and sent word to David, saying, "I am pregnant." So David sent this word to Joab, "Send me Uriah the Hittite." And Joab sent him to David. When Uriah came to him, David asked him how Joab was, how the soldiers were, and how the war was going. Then David said to Uriah, "Go down to your house and wash your feet." So Uriah left the palace, and a gift from the king was sent after him. But Uriah slept at the entrance to the palace with all his master's servants and did not go down to his house. David was told Uriah did not go home. So he asked Uriah, "Haven't you just come from a military campaign? Why didn't you go home?" Uriah said to David, "The ark and Israel and Judah are staying in tents, and my commander Joab and my Lord's men are camped in the open country. How could I go to my house to eat and drink and make love to my wife? As surely as you live, I will not do such a thing." Then David said to him, "Stay here one more day, and tomorrow I will send you back." So Uriah remained in Jerusalem that day and the next. At David's invitation, he ate and drank with him, and David made him drunk. But in the evening, Uriah went out to sleep on his mat among his master's servants. He did not go home. In the morning, David wrote a letter to Joab and sent it with Uriah. In it, he wrote, "Put Uriah out in front where the fighting is fiercest. Then withdraw from him so he will be struck down and die." So while Joab had the city under siege, he put Uriah at a place where he knew the strongest defenders were. When the men of the city came out and fought against Joab, some of the men in David's army fell. Moreover, Uriah the Hittite died. Joab sent David a full account of the battle. He instructed the messenger, "When you have finished giving the king this account of the battle, the king's anger may flare up, and he may ask you, 'Why did you get so close to the city to fight? Didn't you know they will shoot arrows from the wall? Who killed Abimelech, son of Jerubbaal? Didn't a woman drop an upper milestone on him from the wall so that he died in Thebez? Why did you get so close to that wall?' If he asks you this, then say to him, 'Moreover, your servant Uriah the Hittite is dead.'" The messenger set out, and when he arrived, he told David everything Joab had sent him to say. The messenger said to David, "The men overpowered us and came out against us in the open, but we drove them back to the entrance of the city gate. Then the archers shot arrows at our servants from the wall, and some of the king's men died. Moreover, your servant Uriah the Hittite is dead." David told the messenger, "Say this to Joab, 'Don't let this upset you. The sword devours one as well as another. Press the attack against the city and destroy it.' Say this to encourage Joab." When Uriah's wife heard that her husband was dead, she mourned for him. After the time of mourning was over, David had her brought to his house, and she became his wife and bore him a son. But the thing David had done displeased the Lord.
Chapter 12, em português. O Senhor Deus mandou o profeta Natã que fosse falar com Davi. Natã disse: havia 2 homens que viviam na mesma cidade. Um era rico, outro pobre. O rico possuía muito gado e ovelhas, enquanto o pobre tinha somente uma ovelha, e ele havia comprado. Ele cuidou da ovelha, ele a cresceu na sua casa, junto a seus filhos. Ele alimentava com sua própria comida, deixava que ela bebesse no seu próprio copo. E ela dormia no seu colo. A ovelha era como uma filha para ele. Certo dia, um visitante chegou à casa do homem rico. Esse não quis matar um dos seus próprios animais para preparar refeição para o visitante. Em vez disso, preparou como uma refeição para o seu hóspede. Então, Davi ficou furioso daquele homem e disse: "Juro pelo Senhor, Deus vivo, que o homem que fez isso deve ser morto. Ele deverá pagar 4 vezes o que tirou por ter feito uma coisa tão cruel." Então Natã disse a Davi: "Esse homem é você. E isso que o Senhor disse, e isso que diz o Senhor, o Deus de Israel: eu o tornei você rei e salvei de Saul. Eu lhe dei o reino e mulheres. Tornei você rei de Israel e de Judá. E isso não bastasse, eu lhe teria dado 2 vezes mais. Porque é que você desobedeceu aos meus mandamentos e fez uma coisa tão horrível? Você fez o que Urias ateu fosse morto na batalha, deixou anomitas o matasse, então ficou com a esposa dele. Portanto, você que me desobedeceu, tornou mulher de Urias, sempre alguns de seus descendentes morreram de morte violenta. Também afirmo que farei a mesma, farei uma pessoa da sua própria família causar desgraça. Você irá, quando tirar suas esposas e der outro homem, ele terá relação com ela em plena luz do dia. Você pecou escondido em secreto, mas eu farei com que aconteça em plena luz do dia, para que todo o povo de Israel ver. Então Davi disse: eu pequei contra o Senhor. Natã respondeu: o Senhor perdoou o seu pecado, você não morrerá. Mas, porque fez isso, você mostrou tanta desprezo pelo Senhor, e seu filho morrerá. Aí Natã foi para casa. A morte do filho de Davi, Batseba. Então o Senhor fez com que o filho de Davi e da sua mulher Urias ficasse muito doente. Davi orou para que a criança sarasse e não quis comer nada. Entrou no seu quarto, passou a noite inteira deitado no chão. Então os funcionários do palácio tentaram fazer Davi se levantar, mas ele não quis e não comeu nada com eles. 1 semana depois a criança morreu. Os seus funcionários ficaram com medo de dar a notícia a Davi. Eles disseram: enquanto a criança estava viva, Davi não respondia. Quando falávamos com ele, como vamos dizer a ele que a criança morreu? Ele poderá fazer alguma loucura? Quando Davi viu os oficiais cochichando uns com os outros, compreendeu que a criança havia morrido. Então perguntou: a criança morreu? Morreu, responderam eles. Então Davi levantou do chão, tomou banho, penteou os cabelos e trocou de roupa. Depois foi à casa de Deus, o Senhor, e adorou. Quando voltou ao palácio, pediu comida, comeu logo o que lhe havia servido. Aí seus oficiais disseram: nós não entendemos isso. Enquanto o menino estava vivo, o Senhor chorou por ele e não comeu. Mas logo que ele morreu, o Senhor levantou e comeu. Sim, respondeu Davi, enquanto o menino estava vivo, eu jejuei e chorei porque o Senhor poderia ter pena de mim e não deixar que morresse. Mas agora que está morto, por que jejuar? Será que eu poderia fazê-lo viver novamente? Um dia irei para o lugar onde irei para o lugar onde ele está, porém ele nunca voltará para mim. Então Davi consolou a sua esposa Batseba, teve relações com ela, e ela deu à luz a um filho que Davi deu o nome de Salomão. Deus amou o menino e mandou que o profeta Natã lhe disse em nome de Gedias, porque o Senhor Deus o amava. Enquanto isso, Joabe continuou a atacar Rabá, a capital do país de Amon. Quando estava para conquistar a cidade, enviou um mensageiro com o seguinte recado para Davi: eu ataquei Rabá e conquistei os seus reservatórios de água. Reúna agora o resto dos seus soldados. O Senhor ataca a cidade e o tome. Eu não quero ficar com a glória da vitória. Então Davi reuniu aos soldados, foi para Rabá, atacou a cidade e conquistou. Moleque, ídolo de anomitas, adoravam. Tinha uma coroa que passava mais ou menos 34 quilos. A coroa era de ouro, e nela havia uma pedra preciosa, que Davi tirou e colocou na sua própria coroa. Levantou também em Rabá muitas coisas de valor. Davi fez o povo da cidade trabalhar com serras, enxadas, machados e fabricar tijolos. E fez em todas as outras cidades de Amon. Então Davi e seus soldados voltaram para Jerusalém.
Chapter 13. In the course of time, Amnon, son of David, fell in love with Tamar, the beautiful sister of Absalom, son of David. Amnon became frustrated to the point of illness on account of his sister Tamar, for she was a virgin, and it seemed impossible for him to do anything to her. Now Amnon had a friend named Jonadab, son of Shimeah, David's brother. Jonadab was a very shrewd man. He asked Amnon, "Why do you, the king's son, look so haggard morning after morning? Won't you tell me?" Amnon said to him, "I'm in love with Tamar, my brother Absalom's sister." "Go to bed and pretend to be ill," Jonadab said. "When your father comes to see you, say to him, 'I'd like my sister Tamar to come and give me something to eat. Let her prepare the food in my sight so that I may watch her and then eat it from her hand.'" So Amnon lay down and pretended to be ill. When the king came to see him, Amnon said to him, "I'd like my sister Tamar to come and make me some special bread in my sight so that I may eat from her hand." David sent word to Tamar at the palace, "Go to the house of your brother Amnon and prepare some food for him." So Tamar went to the house of her brother Amnon, who was lying down. She took some dough, kneaded it, made the bread in his sight, and baked it. Then she took the pan and served him the bread, but he refused to eat. "Send everyone out of here," Amnon said. So everyone left him. Then Amnon said to Tamar, "Bring the food here into my bedroom so that I may eat from your hand." And Tamar took the bread she had prepared and brought it to her brother Amnon in his bedroom. But when she took it to him to eat, he grabbed her and said, "Come to bed with me, my sister." "Don't, my brother," she said to him. "Don't force me. Such a thing should not be done in Israel. Don't do this wicked thing. What about me? Where could I get rid of my disgrace? And what about you? You would be like one of the wicked fools in Israel. Please speak to the king. He will not keep me from being married to you." But he refused to listen to her, and since he was stronger than she, he raped her. Then Amnon hated her with intense hatred. In fact, he hated her more than he had loved her. Amnon said to her, "Get up and get out." "No," she said to him. "Sending me away would be a greater wrong than what you have already done to me." But he refused to listen to her. He called his personal servant and said, "Get this woman out of here and bolt the door after her." So his servant put her out and bolted the door after her. She was wearing a richly ornamented robe, for this was the kind of garment the virgin daughters of the king wore. Tamar put ashes on her head and tore the ornamented robe she was wearing. She put her hand on her head and went away, weeping aloud as she went. Her brother Absalom said to her, "Has that Amnon, your brother, been with you? Be quiet now, my sister. He's your brother. Don't take this thing to heart." And Tamar lived in her brother Absalom's house, a desolate woman. When King David heard all this, he was furious. Absalom never said a word to Amnon, either good or bad. He hated Amnon because he had disgraced his sister Tamar. 2 years later, when Absalom's sheep shearers were at Baal Hazor, near the border of Ephraim, he invited all the king's sons to come there. Absalom went to the king and said, "Your servant has had shearers come. Will the king and his officials please join me?" "No, my son," the king replied. "All of us should not go. We would only be a burden to you." Although Absalom urged him, he still refused to go, but gave him his blessing. Then Absalom said, "If not, please let my brother Amnon come with us." The king asked him, "Why should he go with you?" But Absalom urged him, so he sent with him Amnon and the rest of the king's sons. Absalom ordered his men, "Listen, when Amnon is in high spirits from drinking wine and I say to you, strike Amnon down, then kill him. Don't be afraid. Have I not given you this order? Be strong and brave. So Absalom's men went and did what Absalom had ordered. Then all the king's sons got up, mounted their mules, and fled. While they were on their way, the report came to David. Absalom has struck down all the king's sons. Not one of them is left. The king stood up, tore his clothes, and lay down on the ground, and all his servants stood by with their clothes torn. But Jonadab, son of Shemaiah, David's brother, said, "My lord should not think that they killed all the princes. Only Amnon is dead. This has been Absalom's expressed intention ever since the day that Amnon raped his sister Tamar. My lord, the king should not be concerned about the report that all the king's sons are dead. Only Amnon is dead." Meanwhile, Absalom had fled. Now the man standing watch looked up and saw many people on the road west of him, coming down the side of the hill. The watchman went and told the king, "I see men in the direction of Horonaim, on the side of the hill." Jonadab said to the king, "See, the king's sons are here. It has happened just as your servant said." As he finished speaking, the king's sons came in wailing loudly. The king too and all his servants wept very bitterly. Absalom fled and went to Talmai, son of Ammihud, the king of Geshur. But King David mourned for his son every day. After Absalom fled and went to Geshur, he stayed there for 3 years, and the spirit of the king longed to go to Absalom, for he was consoled concerning Amnon's death.
Chapter 14. So Joab, the son of Zeruiah, perceived that the king's heart was concerned about Absalom. And Joab sent to Tekoa and brought from there a wise woman and said to her, "Please pretend to be a mourner and put on mourning apparel. Do not anoint yourself with oil, but act like a woman who has been mourning a long time for the dead. Go to the king and speak to him in this manner." So Joab put the words in her mouth. And when the woman of Tekoa spoke to the king, she fell on her face to the ground and prostrated herself and said, "Help, O king." Then the king said to her, "What troubles you?" And she answered, "Indeed, I'm a widow. My husband is dead. Now your maidservant had 2 sons, and the 2 fought with each other in the field, and there was no one to part them. But the one struck the other and killed him. And now the whole family has risen up against your maidservant." And they said, "Deliver him who struck his brother, that we may execute him for the life of his brother whom he killed, and we will destroy the heir also. So they would extinguish my ember that is left, and leave to my husband neither name nor remnant on the earth." Then the king said to the woman, "Go to your house, and I'll give orders concerning you." And the woman of Tekoa said to the king, "My lord, O king, let the iniquity be on me and on my father's house, and the king and his throne be guiltless." So the king said, "Whoever says anything to you, bring him to me, and he shall not touch you any more." Then she said, "Please let the king remember the Lord your God, and do not permit the avenger of blood to destroy anyone any more, lest they destroy my son." And he said, "As the Lord lives, not one hair of your son shall fall to the ground." Therefore the woman said, "Please, let your maidservant speak another word to my lord the king." And he said, "Say on." So the woman said, "Why then have you schemed such a thing against the people of God? For the king speaks this thing as one who is guilty, in that the king does not bring his banished one home again. For we will surely die and become like water spilled on the ground, which cannot be gathered up again. Yet God does not take away a life, but he devises means so that his banished ones are not expelled from him. Now therefore I have come to speak of this thing to my lord the king, because the people have made me afraid. And your maidservant said, I'll now speak to the king. It may be that the king will perform the request of his maidservant. For the king will hear and deliver his maidservant from the hand of the man who would destroy me and my son together from the inheritance of God. Your maidservant said, the word of my lord the king will now be comforting, for as the angel of God, so is my lord the king in discerning good and evil. And may the Lord your God be with you. Then the king answered and said to the woman, please do not hide from me anything that I ask you. And the woman said, please let my lord the king speak. So the king said, is the hand of Joab with you in all this? And the woman answered and said, as you live, my lord the king, no one can turn to the right hand or to the left hand from anything that my lord the king has spoken. For your servant Joab commanded me, and he put all these words in the mouth of your maidservant. To bring about this change of affairs, your servant Joab has done this thing. But my Lord is wise according to the wisdom of the angel of God, to know everything that is in the earth. And the king said to Joab, all right, I have granted this thing. Go therefore, bring back the young man Absalom. Then Joab fell to the ground on his face and bowed himself and thanked the king. And Joab said, today your servant knows that I have found favor in your sight, my lord, O king, in that the king has fulfilled the request of his servant. So Joab arose and went to Geshur and brought Absalom to Jerusalem. And the king said, let him return to his own house, but do not let him see my face. So Absalom returned to his own house, but did not see the king's face. Now in all Israel there was one who was praised as much as Absalom for his good looks. For the sole of his foot to the crown of his, from the sole of his foot to the crown of his head, there was no blemish in him. And when he cut the hair of his head, at the end of every year, he cut it because it was heavy on him. When he cut it, he weighed the hair of his head at 200 shekels, according to the king's standard. To Absalom were born 3 sons and 1 daughter, whose name was Tamar. She was a woman of beautiful appearance. And Absalom dwelt 2 full years in Jerusalem, but did not see the king's face. Therefore Absalom sent for Joab to send him to the king, but he would not come to him. And when he sent again the second time, he would not come. So he said to his servants, see, Joab's field is near mine, and he has barley there. Go and set it on fire. And Absalom's servants set the field on fire. Then Joab arose and came to Absalom's house and said to him, why have your servants set my field on fire? And Absalom answered Joab, look, I sent to you saying, come here, so that I may send you to the king, to say, why have I come from Geshur? It will be better for me to be there still. Now therefore let me see the king's face, but if there is iniquity in me, let him execute me. So Joab went to the king and told him. And when he had called for Absalom, he came to the king and bowed himself on his face to the ground before the king. Then the king kissed Absalom.
2 Samuel chapter 15. After this, Absalom provided himself a chariot and horses and 50 men to run ahead of him. Absalom used to rise early and stand beside the road into the gate. And when anyone brought a suit before the king for judgment, Absalom would call out and say, from what city are you? When the person said, your servant is from such and such a tribe in Israel, Absalom would say, see, your claims are good and right, but there is no one deputed by the king to hear you. Absalom would also say, if only I were judge in the land, then all who had a suit or cause might come to me. I would give them justice. Whenever people came near to do obeisance to him, he would put out his hand and take hold of them and kiss them. Then Absalom did to every Israelite that who came to the king for judgment. So Absalom stole the hearts of the people of Israel. At the end of the 4 years, Absalom said to the king, "Please, let me go to Hebron and pay the vow that I have made to the Lord. For your servant made a vow while I lived at Geshur in Aram. If the Lord will indeed bring me back to Jerusalem, then I will serve the Lord in Hebron." The king said to him, "Go in peace." So he got up and went to Hebron. But Absalom sent secret messengers throughout all the tribes of Israel, saying, "As soon as you hear the sound of the trumpet, then shout, 'Absalom has become king in Hebron.'" 200 men from Jerusalem went with Absalom. They were invited guests, and they were in innocence, knowing nothing of the matter. While Absalom was offering the sacrifices, he sent Ahithophel, the Gilonite, David's counselor, from his cities Gilgal. Conspiracy grew in strength, and the people with Absalom kept increasing. A messenger came to David, saying, "The hearts of the Israelites have gone after Absalom." Then David said to all his officials, who were with him at Jerusalem, "Get up, let us flee, and there will be no escape from us from Absalom. Hurry, or he will soon overtake us and bring disaster down upon us, and attack the city with the edge of the sword." The king's officials said to the king, "Your servants are ready to do whatever the Lord the king decides." So the king left, followed by all his household, except for 10 concubines who he left behind to look after the house. The king left, followed by all the people, and they stopped at the last house. All his officials passed by him, and all the Cherethites, and all the Pelethites, and all the 600 Gittites who had followed him from Gath passed on before the king. Then the king said to Ittai the Gittite, "Why are you coming with us? Go back and stay with the king, for you are a foreigner and also an exile from your own home. You came only yesterday, and shall I today make you wander about with us while I go whither I can? Go back and take your king's vote with you, and may the Lord show steadfast love and faithfulness to you." But Ittai answered the king, "As the Lord lives, and as my lord the king lives, wherever my lord the king may be, whether for death or for life, there also your servant will be." David said to Ittai, "Go then, march on." So Ittai the Gittite marched on, and with all his men and all the little ones who were with him. The whole country wept aloud as all the people passed by. The king crossed the Wadi Kidron, and all the people moved on towards the wilderness. Abiathar came up, and Zadok also, with all the Levites carrying the ark of the covenant of God. They set down the ark of God until the people had all passed out of the city. Then the king said to Zadok, "Carry the ark of God back into the city. If I find favor in your eyes of the Lord, he will bring me back and let me see both it and the place where it stays. But if he says, 'I take no pleasure in you, here I am,' let him do to me what seems good to him." The king also said to the priest Zadok, "Look, go back to the city in peace, and you and Abiathar with your 2 sons, Ahimaaz and your son, and Jonathan, son of Abiathar. See, I will wait at the Lord's will at the fords of the wilderness until the word comes from you to inform me." So Zadok and Abiathar took the ark of God back to Jerusalem, and they remained there. But David went up the ascent of the Mount of Olives, weeping as he went, with his head covered and walking barefoot. And all the people who were with him covered their heads and went up weeping as they went. David was told that Ahithophel was among the conspirators with Absalom. And David said, "O Lord, I pray, turn the counsel of Ahithophel into foolishness. When David came to the summit where God was worshipped, Hushai the Archite came to meet him with his coat torn and earth on his head. David said to him, "If you go with me, you will be a burden to me. But if you return to the city and say to Absalom, 'I will be your servant, O king, as I have been your father's servant in times past. So now I will be your servant. Then you will defeat for me the counsel of Ahithophel. The priests Zadok and Abiathar will be with you there. So whatever you hear from the king's house, tell it to the priests Zadok and Abiathar. Their sons are with them there, Zadok's son Ahimaaz and Abiathar's son Jonathan, and by them you shall report to me everything you hear." So Hushai, David's friend, came into the city just as Absalom was entering Jerusalem.
Chapter 16 em português. Mal Davi tinha passado pelo alto do monte, lá estava sua esposa Zilba, criado de Mefibosete. Ele trazia 2 jumentos carregando 200 pães, 100 bolos de uvas, passas, 100 uvas da estação e uma vasilha de couro cheia de vinho. O rei perguntou a Zilba: "Por que você trouxe essas coisas?" Zilba respondeu: "Os jumentos servirão de montaria para a família do rei. Os pães e as frutas são para os homens comerem, e o vinho servirá para reanimar o que ficarem exaustos no deserto." "Onde está Mefibosete, neto de o seu senhor?" perguntou o rei. Respondeu-lhe Zilba: "Ele ficou em Jerusalém, pois acredita que os israelitas lhe restituirão o reino do seu avô." Então o rei disse a Zilba: "Tudo o que pertencia a Mefibosete agora é seu. Humildemente me prostro", disse Zilba, "que o rei, meu senhor, agradece-se de mim." Chegando o rei Davi a Baurim, um homem de clã da família de Saul, chamado Simei, filho de Gera, saiu da cidade proferindo maldições contra ele. Ele atirava pedras em Davi e em todos os conselheiros do rei. Embora todo o exército e a guarda e elite estivessem à direita e à esquerda do rei Davi, enquanto amaldiçoava, Simei dizia: saia daqui, assassino, bandido. O Senhor retribuiu a você todo o sangue derramado na família de Saul, em cujo lugar você reinou. O Senhor entregou o reino nas mãos de seu filho Absalão. Você está arruinado porque é um assassino." Então Abissai, filho de Zeruai, disse ao rei: "Por que esse cão morto amaldiçoa o rei, meu senhor? Permite que lhe corte a cabeça?" Mas o rei disse: "Que é que você tem com isso, filho de Zeruiá? Ele me amaldiçoa porque o Senhor lhe disse que amaldiçoasse Davi. Portanto, quem poderá questioná-lo?" Disse então Davi a Abissai e a todos os conselheiros: "Até meu filho, sangue do meu sangue, procura matar-me. Quanto mais este benjamita, deixe-nos em paz, que amaldiçoe, pois foi o Senhor que mandou fazer isso. Talvez o Senhor considere a minha aflição e me retribua com o bem a maldição que hoje recebo." Assim Davi e os seus soldados prosseguiram pela estrada, enquanto Simei ia pela encosta do monte, no lado oposto, amaldiçoando e jogando pedras à terra. O rei e todo o que estava com ele, chegando exaustos a seu destino, e lá descansaram. Enquanto isso, Absalão e todos os homens de Israel entraram em Jerusalém, e Aitofel estavam com eles. Então Uzai, o arquita, amigo de Davi, aproximou-se de Absalão e exclamou: "Viva o rei! Viva o rei!" Mas Absalão disse a Uzai: É essa a lealdade que você tem para com o seu amigo? Por que você não foi com ele? Respondeu Uzai: Não sou escolhido do Senhor, desde que o povo de todos os israelitas, e com ele permanecerei. Além disso, a quem devo servir? Não deveria eu servir o filho, assim como servi a teu pai, também te servirei. Então Absalão disse a Aiotofel: Dê-nos o seu conselho, que devemos fazer? Aiotofel respondeu: Aconselho que tenhas relações com as concubinas de seu pai, que ele deixou para tomar conta o palácio. Então todo Israel ficará sabendo que te tornaste repugnante para teu pai, e todos os que estão contigo se encherão de coragem. E assim armaram uma tenda no terraço do palácio para Absalão. E ele teve relação com as concubinas de seu pai à vista de todo Israel. Naquela época, tanto Davi como Absalão consideraram os conselhos de Aiotofel como se fossem a palavra do próprio Deus.
Chapter 17. Moreover, Ahithophel said to Absalom, Now let me choose 12,000 men, and I will arise and pursue David tonight. I will come upon him while he is weary and weak, and make him afraid. And all the people who will be with him will flee, and I will strike only the king. Then I will bring back all the people to you. When all return except the man who seeks, all the people will be at peace. And the saying pleased Absalom and all the elders of Israel. Then Absalom said, Now call Husaiah the Archite also, and let us hear what he says too. And when Husaiah and Absalom spoke to him, saying, Ahithophel has spoken in this manner. Shall we do as he says? If not, speak up. So Husaiah said to Absalom, The advice that Ahithophel has given is not good at this time. For said Husaiah, How now your father and his men, that they are mighty men, and they are engaged in their minds like a bear robbed of her cubs in the field. And your father is a man of war, and will not camp with the people. Surely by now he is hidden in some pit, or in some other place, and it will be, when some of them are overthrown at the first, that whoever hears it will say, There is a slaughter among the people who follow Absalom. And even he who is valiant, whose heart is like the heart of a lion, will melt completely. For all Israel knows that your father is a mighty man, and those who are with him are valiant men. Therefore, I advise that all Israel be grateful to you, from Dan to Beersheba, like the sand that is by the sea, for multitude, and that you go to battle in person. So we will come upon him in some place where he may be found, and he will fall on him as the dew falls on the ground. And of him and of all the men who are with him there shall not be left as much as one. Moreover, if he has withdrawn into the city, then all the Israels shall bring ropes to the city, and we will pour into the river until there is not one small stone found there. So Absalom and all the men of Israel said, The advice of Husaiah the Archite is better than the advice of Ahithophel. For the Lord had proposed to defeat the good advice of Ahithophel, to the intent that the Lord might bring disaster on Absalom. Then Hushai said to Zadok and Ahithophel the priest, "Thus says Ahithophel advise Absalom and the elders of Israel, and thus so I have advised. Now therefore send quickly and tell David, saying, do not spend this night in the plains of the wickedness, but speedily cross over, lest the king and all the people who are with him be swallowed up." Now Jonathan and Ahimaaz stayed at En-Rogel, and they dared not see the coming into the city. So a female servant would come and tell them, and they would go and tell King David. Nevertheless, the lads saw them and told Absalom, but both of them went quickly and came to a man's house in Bahurim. And he had a well in his court, and they went down into it. Then the woman took a spread of covering over her well's mouth and spread ground grain on it, and the thing was not known. And when Absalom's servant came to the woman in the house, they said, "Where are Ahimaaz and Jonathan?" So the woman said to them, "They have gone over the water brook." And when they had searched and could not find them, they returned to Jerusalem. And it came to pass, after they had departed, that they came up out of the well and went and told King David and said to David, "Arise and cross over the water quickly, for thus has Ahithophel advised against you." So David and all the people who were with him arose and crossed over the Jordan. By morning light, not one of them was left who had not gone over the Jordan. Now, when Ahithophel saw that his advice was not followed, he saddled a donkey and arose and went home to his house, to his city. Then he put his household in order and hanged himself and died. And he was buried in his father's tomb. Then David went to Mahanaim, and Absalom crossed over the Jordan, he and all the men of Israel with him. And Absalom made Amasa captain of the army instead of Joab. This Amasa was the son of the man whose name was Jethro, and an Israelite who had gone to Abigail, the daughter of Nash's sister of Zeruiah, Jobab's mother. So Israel and Absalom encamped in the land of Gilead. Now it happened, when Daniel had come to Mahanaim, that Solbi, the son of Nahash, from Rabbah of the people of Ammon, Machi, the son of Amil, from Lo-Debar, and Brasilia, the Gileadite, from Rogelim, brought beds and basins, earthen vessels and wheat, barley and flour, parched grain and beans, lentils and parched seeds, honeys and curds, sheep and cheese of the herd, for David and the people who were with him ate. For they said, "The people are hungry and weary and thirsty in the wilderness."
Samuel chapter 18. Then David mustered the men who were with him and set over them commanders of thousands and commanders of hundreds. And David sent out the army, 1/3 under the command of Joab, 1/3 under the command of Abishai, the son of Zeruiah, Joab's brother, and 1/3 under the command of Ittai the Gittite. And the king said to the men, "I myself will also go out with you." But the men said, "You shall not go out, for if we flee, they will not care about us. If
half of us die, they will not care about us. But you are worth 10,000 of us. Therefore, it is better that you send us help from the city. The king said to them, whatever seems best to you, I will do. So the king stood at the side of the gate, while all the army marched out by hundreds and by thousands. And the king ordered Joab and Abishai and Ittai, deal gently for my sake with the young man Absalom. And all the people heard when the king gave orders to all the commanders about Absalom. So the army went out into the field against Israel, and the battle was fought in the forest of Ephraim. And the men of Israel were defeated there by the servants of David, and the loss there was great on that day, 20,000 men. The battle spread over the face of all the country, and the forest devoured more people that day than the sword. And Absalom happened to meet the servants of David. Absalom was riding on his mule, and the mule, excuse me, the mule went under the thick branches of a great oak, and his head got caught fast in the oak, and he was suspended between heaven and earth, while the mule that was under him went on. And a certain man saw it and told Joab, behold, I saw Absalom hanging in an oak. And Joab said to the man who told him, what, you saw him? Why then did you not strike him there to the ground? I would have been glad to give you 10 pieces of silver and a belt. But the man said to Joab, even if I felt in my hand the weight of 1,000 pieces of silver, I would not reach out my hand against the king's son. For in our hearing, the king commanded you and Abishai and Ittai, for my sake, protect the young man Absalom. On the other hand, if I had dealt treacherously against his life, and there is nothing hidden from the king, then you yourself would have stood aloof. Joab said, I will not waste time like this with you. And he took 3 javelins in his hand and thrust them into the heart of Absalom while he was still alive in the oak. And the 10 young men, Joab's armor-bearers, surrounded Absalom and struck him and killed him. Then Joab blew the trumpet, and the troops came back from pursuing Israel, for Joab restrained them. And they took Absalom and threw him into a great pit in the forest and raised over him a very great heap of stones. And all Israel fled, everyone to his own home. Now Absalom in his lifetime had taken and set up for himself the pillar that is in the king's valley. For he said, I have no son to keep my name in remembrance. He called the pillar after his own name, and it is called Absalom's monument to this day. When Ahimaaz, the son of Zadok, said, let me run and carry news to the king that the Lord has delivered him from the hand of his enemies. And Joab said to him, you are not to carry news today. You may carry news another day, but today you shall carry no news, because the king's son is dead. Then Joab said to the Cushites, go, tell the king what you have seen. The Cushite bowed before Joab and ran. Then Ahimaaz, the son of Zadok, said again to Joab, come what may, let me also run after the Cushite. And Joab said, why will you run, my son, seeing that you will have no reward for the news? Come what may, he said, I will run. So he said to him, run. Then Ahimaaz ran by the way of the plain and outran the Cushites. Now David was sitting between the 2 gates, And the watchman went up to the roof of the gate by the wall. And when he lifted up his eyes and looked, he saw a man running alone. The watchman called out and told the king, and the king said, "If he is alone, there is news in his mouth." And he drew nearer and nearer. The watchman saw another man running, and the watchman called to the gate and said, "See, another man running alone." The king said, "He also brings news." The watchman said, "I think the running of the first is like the running of Ahimaaz, the son of Zadok." And the king said, "He is a good man and comes with good news." Then Ahimaaz cried out to the king, "All is well." And he bowed before the king with his face to the earth and said, "Blessed be the Lord your God, who has delivered up the men who raised their hand against my lord the king." And the king said, "Is it well with the young man Absalom?" Ahimaaz answered, "When Joab sent the king's servants, your servant, I saw a great commotion, but I do not know what it was." And the king said, "Turn aside and stand here." So he turned aside and stood still. And behold, the Cushite came, and the Cushite said, "Good news for my lord the king, for the Lord has delivered you this day from the hand of all who rose up against you." The king said to the Cushite, "Is it well with the young man Absalom?" And the Cushite answered, "May the enemies of my lord the king and all who rise up against you for evil be like that young man." And the king was deeply moved and went up to the chamber over the gate and wept. And as he went, he said, "Oh, my son Absalom, my son Absalom, would I had died instead of you, O Absalom, my son, my son."
Chapter 19. And Joab was told, "Behold, the king is weeping and mourning for Absalom." So the victory that day was turned into mourning for all the people, for the people heard it and said that day, "The king is grieved for his son." And the people stole back into the city that day, as people who were ashamed steal away when they flee in battle. But the king covered his face, and the king cried out with a loud voice, "O my son Absalom, O Absalom, my son, my son." Then Joab came into the house to the king and said, "Today you have disgraced all your servants, who today have saved your life, the lives of your sons and daughters, the lives of your wives, and the lives of your concubines, in that you love your enemies and hate your friends. For you have declared today that you regard neither princes nor servants. For today I perceive that if Absalom had lived and all of us had died today, then it would have pleased you well. Now therefore, arise, go out and speak comfort to your servants. For I swear by the Lord, if you do not go out, not one will stay with you this night. And that will be worse for you than all the evils that has befallen you from your youth until now." Then the king arose and sat in the gate, and they told all the people, saying, "There is the king sitting in the gate." So all the people came before the king, for every one of Israel had fled to his tent. Now all the people were in a dispute throughout all the tribes of Israel, saying, "The king saved us from the hand of our enemies. He delivered us from the hand of the Philistine, and now he has fled from the land because of Absalom. But Absalom, whom we anointed over us, has died in battle. Now therefore, why do you say nothing about bringing back the king?" So King David sent to Zadok and Abiathar and the priests, saying, "Speak to the elders of Judah, saying, Why are you the last to bring the king back to his house, since the words of all Israel have come to the king, to his very house? You are my brethren. You are my bone and my flesh. Why then are you the last to bring back the king? And say to Amasa, are you not my bone and my flesh? God do so to me and more also, if you are not commander of the army before me, continually in the place of Joab. So he swayed the heart of all the men of Judah, saying, just as the heart of one man, so that they sent this word to the king. Return you and all your servants. Then the king returned and came to Jordan, and Judah came to Gilgal, and to meet the king, to escort the king across the Jordan. And Shimei, the son of Gera, a Benjamite, who was from Bahurim, hurried and came down with the men of Judah to meet the king David. There were 1,000 men of Benjamin with him, and Ziba the servant of the house of Saul, and his 15 sons, and his 20 servants were with him, and they went over to Jordan before the king. Then a ferryboat went across to carry the king, household, and to do what he thought good. Now Shimei the son of Gera fell down before the king when he had crossed the Jordan. Then he said to the king, do not let my lord impute iniquity to me, or remember what wrong your servant did on the day that my lord, the king, left Jerusalem, that the king should take it to heart. For I, your servant, know that I have sinned. Therefore, here I am, the first to come today of all the house of Joseph, to go down to meet my lord the king. But Abishai, the son of Zeruiah, answered and said, shall not Shimei be put to death for this, because he cursed the Lord's anointing? And David said, what have I to do with you, you sons of Zeruiah, that you should be adversaries to me today? Shall any man be put to death today in Israel? For do I not know that today I am king over Israel? Therefore the king said to Shimei, you shall not die. And the king swore to him. Now Mephibosheth, the son of Saul, came down to meet the king, and he had not cared for his feet, nor trimmed his mustache, nor washed his clothes, from the day the king departed until the day he returned in peace. So it was, when he had come to Jerusalem to meet the king, that the king said to him, why did you not go with me, Mephibosheth? And he answered, my lord, O king, my servant deceived me. For your servant said, I would saddle a donkey for myself, that I may ride on it and go to the king, because your servant is lame. And he had slandered your servant to my lord the king. But my lord the king is like the angel of God. Therefore, do what is good in your eyes. For all my father's house were but dead men before my lord the king. Yet you set your servant among those who eat at your own table. Therefore, what right have I still to cry out any more to the king? So the king said to him, why do you speak any more of your matters? I have said, you and Ziba divide the land. Then Mephibosheth said to the king, rather, let him take it all, inasmuch as my lord the king has come back in peace to his own house. And Barzillai the Gileadite came down from Rogelim and went across Jordan with the king to escort him across Jordan. Now Barzillai was a very aged man, 80 years old, and he had provided the king with supplies while he stayed at Mahanaim, for he was a very rich man. And the king said to Barzillai, come across with me, and I will provide for you while you are with me in Jerusalem. But Barzillai said to the king, how long have I to live that I should go up with the king to Jerusalem? I am today 80 years old. Can I discern between the good and bad? Can your servant taste what I eat or what I drink? Can I hear any longer the voice of singing men and singing women? Why then should your servant be any further burden to my lord the king? Your servant will go a little way across the Jordan with the king. And why should the king repay me with such a reward? Please, let your servant turn back again, that I may die in my own city, near the grave of my father and mother. But here is your servant, Chimham. Let him cross over with my lord the king, and do for him what seems good to you. And the king answered, Chimham shall cross over with me, and I will do for him what seems good to you. Now, whatever your request of me, I will do it for you. Then all the people went over the Jordan, and when the king had crossed over, the king kissed Barzillai and blessed him, and he returned to his own place. Now the king went on to Gilgal, and Chimham went on with him, and all the people of Judah escorted the king, and also half the people of Israel. Just then all the men of Israel came to the king, and said to the king, why have our brethren, the men of Judah, stolen your way and brought the king, his household, and all David's men with him across the Jordan? So all the men of Judah answered the men of Israel, because the king is a close relative of ours. Why then are you angry over this matter? Have you ever eaten at the king's expense, or has he given us any gift? And the men of Israel answered the men of Judah and said, we have 10 shares in the king. Therefore, we also have more right to David than you. Why then do you despise us? Were we not the first to advise bringing back our king? Yet the word of the men of Judah were fiercer than the word of the men of Israel.
2 Samuel 20. And there happened to be there a rebel, whose name was Sheba, the son of Bishri, a Benjamite. And he blew a trumpet and said, we have no share in David, nor do we have inheritance in the son of Jesse. Every man to his tents, O Israel. So every man of Israel deserted David and followed Sheba, the son of Bishri. But the men of Judah, from the Jordan as far as Jerusalem, remained loyal to their king. Now David came to his house at Jerusalem, and the king took the 10 women, his concubines whom he had left to keep the house, and put them in seclusion and supported them, but did not go into them. So they were shut up to the day of their death, living in widowhood. And the king said to Amasa, assemble the men of Judah for me within 3 days, and present here yourself. So Amasa went to assemble the men of Judah, but he delayed longer than the set time which David had appointed him. And David said to Abishai, now Sheba, the son of Bishri, will do us more harm than Absalom. Take your Lord's servants and pursue him, lest he find for himself fortified cities and escape us. So Joab's men, the Cherethites, the Pelethites, and all the mighty men went out after him. And they went out of Jerusalem to pursue Sheba, the son of Bishri. When they were at the large stone, which is in Gibeon, Amasa came before them. Now Joab was dressed in battle armor. On it was a belt with a sword fastened in its sheath at his hips. And as he was going forward, it fell out. Then Joab said to Amasa, are you in health, my brother? And Joab took Amasa by the beard with his right hand to kiss him. But Amasa did not notice the sword that was in Joab's hand, and he struck him with it in the stomach, and his entrails poured out on the ground, and he did not strike him again. Thus he died. Then Joab and Abishai his son pursued Sheba the son of Bishri. Meanwhile, one of Joab's men stood near Amasa and said, whoever favors Joab and whoever is for David followed Joab. But Amasa wallowed in his blood in the middle of the highway. And when the man saw that all the people stood still, he moved Amasa from the highway to the field and threw a garment over him. When he saw that everyone who came upon him halted, when he was removed from the highway, all the people went on after Joab to pursue Sheba, the son of Bishri. And when he went through all the tribes of Israel to Abel and Beth Mahasha and all the Berites, so they gathered together and also went after Sheba. When they came and besieged him in Abel of Beth Mahasha, and they stood up a siege mound against the city, and it stood by the rampart, and all the people who were in Joab battered the wall to throw it down. Then a wise woman cried out from the city, "Hear, hear, please say to Joab, come nearby that I may speak with you." When he had come near to her, the woman said, "Are you Joab?" He answered, "I am." Then she said to him, "Hear the words of your maidservant." And he answered, "I am listening." So she spoke, saying, "They used to talk in former times, saying, they shall surely seek guidance at Abel, and so they would end disputes. I am among the peaceable and faithful in Israel. You seek to destroy a city and a mother in Israel. Why would you swallow up the inheritance of the Lord?" And Joab answered and said, far be it from me that I should swallow up or destroy. That is not so. But a man from the mountains of Ephraim, Sheba, the son of Bishri by name, has raised his hand against the king, against David. Deliver him only, and I will depart from the city. So the woman said to Joab, "Watch, his head will be thrown to you over the wall." Then the woman in her wisdom went to all the people, and they cut off the head of Sheba, the son of Bishri, and threw it out to Joab. Then he blew a trumpet, and they withdrew from the city, every man to his tent. So Joab returned to the king in Jerusalem. So Joab was over all the army of Israel. Benaiah, the son of Jehoiada, was over the Cherethites and the Pelethites. Adoram was in charge of revenue. Jehoshaphat, the son of Ahilud, was recorder. Sheva was scribe. Zadok and Abiathar were the priests, and Ira the Jarite was a chief minister under David.
Chapter 21. During David's reign, there was a famine for 3 successive years, so David inquired of the Lord. The Lord answered, "It is due to Saul and his bloody family because he killed the Gibeonites." The Gibeonites were not Israelites, but rather a remnant of the Amalekites. The Israelites had taken an oath concerning them, but Saul had tried to kill them in his zeal for the Israelites and Judah. So David summoned the Gibeonites and spoke to them. He asked the Gibeonites, "What should I do for you? How can I make atonement so that you will bring a blessing on the Lord's inheritance?"
The Gibeonites said to him, "We are not asking for silver and gold from Saul or his family, and we cannot put anyone to death in Israel. Whatever you say, I will do for you," he said. They replied to the king, "As for the man who annihilated us and plotted to destroy us so we would not exist within the whole territory of Israel, let 7 of his male descendants be handed over to us, so we may hang them in the presence of the Lord at Gibeah of Saul, the Lord's chosen." The king answered, "I will hand them over." David spared Mephibosheth, the son of Saul's son Jonathan, because of the oath of the Lord that was between David and Jonathan, Saul's son. But the king took Armoni and Mephibosheth, who were the 2 sons whom Rizpah, daughter of Aiah, had borne to Saul, and the 5 sons whom Merab, daughter of Saul, had borne to Adriel, son of Barzillai, the Maholathite, and handed them over to the Gibeonites. They hanged them on the hill in the presence of the Lord. The 7 of them died together. They were executed in the first days of the harvest, at the beginning of the barley harvest. Rizpah, Aiah's daughter, took sackcloth and spread it out for herself on the rock from the beginning of the harvest until the rain poured down from heaven on the bodies. She kept the birds of the sky from them by day and the wild animals by night. When it was reported to David what Saul's concubine Rizpah, daughter of Aiah, had done, he went and got the bones of Saul and his son Jonathan from the citizens of Jabesh Gilead. They had stolen them from the public square of Bethshan, where the Philistines had hung the bodies the day the Philistines killed Saul at Gilboa. David had the bones brought from there. They gathered up the bones of Saul's family who had been hanged and buried the bones of Saul and his son Jonathan at Zelah in the land of Benjamin, in the tomb of Saul's father Kish. They did everything the king commanded. After this, God was receptive to prayer for the land. The Philistines again waged war against Israel. David went down with his soldiers, and they fought the Philistines, but David became exhausted. Then Ishbi-Benob, one of the descendants of the giant, whose bronze spear weighed about 8 pounds and who wore new armor, intended to kill David. But Abishai, son of Zeruiah, came to his aid, struck the Philistine and killed him. Then David's men swore to him, "You must never again go out with us to battle. You must not extinguish the lamp of Israel." After this, there was another battle with the Philistines at Gob. At that time, Sibbecai the Hushathite killed Saph, who was one of the descendants of the giant. Once again, there was a battle with the Philistines at Gob, and Elhanan, son of Jaar-oregim, the Bethlehemite, killed Goliath of Gath. The shaft of his spear was like a weaver's beam. At Gath, there was still another battle. A huge man was there with 6 fingers on each hand and 6 toes on each foot, 24 in all. He too was descended from the giant. When he taunted Israel, Jonathan, son of David's brother Shimei, killed him. These 4 were descended from the giant in Gath and were killed by David and his soldiers.
Chapter 22. David spoke to the Lord the word of this song on the day when the Lord delivered him from the hands of all his enemies and from the hand of Saul. He said, "The Lord is my rock and my fortress and my deliverer, my God, my rock in whom I take refuge, my shield and the horn of my salvation, my stronghold and my refuge, my Savior. You save me from violence. I call upon the Lord, who is worthy to be praised. And I am saved from my enemies, for the waves of death encompassed me, and the torrents of perdition assailed me. The cords of Sheol entangled me. The snares of death confronted me. In my distress, I called upon the Lord. To my God I called. From his temple, he heard my voice, and my cry came to his ears. Then the earth thrilled and rocked, and the foundations of the heavens trembled and quaked, because he was angry. Smoke went up from his nostrils, and devouring fire from his mouth. Glowing coals flamed forth from him. He bowed the heavens and came down. Thick darkness was under his feet. He rode on a cherub and flew. He was seen upon the wings of the wind. He made darkness around him a canopy, thick clouds, a gathering of water. Out of the brightness before him, coals of fire flamed forth. The Lord thundered from heaven. The Most High uttered his voice. He sent out arrows and scattered them, lightning and rooted them. Then the channels of the sea were seen, and the foundations of the world were laid bare at the rebuke of the Lord. At the blast of the breath of his nostrils, he reached from on high. He took me, he drew me out from mighty waters. He delivered me from my strong enemy, from those who hated me, for they were too mighty for me. They came upon me in the day of my calamity, but the Lord was my stay. He brought me out into a broad place. He delivered me, because he delighted in me. The Lord rewarded me according to my righteousness, according to the cleanness of my hands. He recompensed me. For I have kept the ways of the Lord, and have not wickedly departed from my God. For all his ordinances were before me, and from his statutes I did not turn aside. I was blameless before him, and I kept myself from guilt. Therefore the Lord has recompensed me according to my righteousness, according to my cleanness in his sight. With the loyal, you show yourself loyal. With the blameless, you show yourself blameless. With the pure, you show yourself pure. And with the crooked, you show yourself perverse. You deliver a humble people, but your eyes are upon the haughty to bring them down. Indeed, you are my lamp, O Lord. The Lord lightens my darkness, but you I can crush. By you I can crush a troop, and by my God I can leap over a wall. This God, his way is perfect. The promise of the Lord proves true. He is a shield for all who take refuge in him. For who is God but the Lord? And who is a rock except our God? The God who has girded me with strength has opened wide my path. He made my feet like the feet of deer and set me secure on the heights. He trained my hands for war so that my arms can bend a bow of bronze. You have given me the shield of your salvation, and your help has made me great. You made me stride freely, and my feet do not slip. I pursued my enemies and destroyed them, and did not turn back until they were consumed. I consumed them, I struck them down, so that they did not rise. They fell under my feet. For you girded me with strength for the battle. You made my assailants sink under me. You made my enemies turn their backs to me. Those who hated me, and I destroyed them. They looked, but there was no one to save them. They cried to the Lord, but he did not answer them. I beat them fine, like the dust of the earth. I crushed them and stamped them down, like the mire of the streets. You delivered me from strife with the peoples. You kept me as the head of the nations. People whom I had not known served me. Foreigners came cringing to me. As soon as they heard of me, they obeyed me. Foreigners lost heart and came trembling out of their strongholds. The Lord lives. Blessed be my rock, and exalted be my God, the rock of my salvation, the God who gave me vengeance and brought down peoples under me. Who brought me out from my enemies? You exalted me above my adversaries. You delivered me from the violent. For this I will extol you, O Lord, among the nations, and sing praises to your name. He is a tower of salvation for his king, and shows steadfast love to his anointed, to David and his descendants forever.
2 Samuel chapter 23. These are the last words of David, the inspired utterance of David, son of Jesse, the utterance of the man exalted by the Most High, the man anointed by the God of Jacob, the hero of Israel's songs. The Spirit of the Lord spoke through me. His word was on my tongue. The God of Israel spoke. The Rock of Israel said to me, when one rules over people in righteousness, when he rules in fear of God, he is like the light of the morning at sunrise on a cloudless morning, like the brightness after rain that brings grass from the earth. If my house was not right with God, surely he would not have made me an everlasting covenant, arranged and secured in every part. Surely he would not bring to fruition my salvation and grant me my every desire. But evil men are all to be cast aside like thorns, which are not gathered with the hand. Whoever touches thorns uses a tool of iron or the shaft of a spear. They are burned up when they lie. These are the names of David's mighty warriors. Joshua-Bathsheba, a Tekonomite, was the chief of the three. He raised his spear against 800 men, whom he killed in one encounter. Next to him was Eleazar, son of Dode, the Ahohite. As one of the three mighty warriors, he was with David when the taunted the Philistines gathered at Pasdammim for battle. Then the Israelites retreated, but Eleazar stood his ground and struck down the Philistines till his hand grew tired and froze to the sword. The Lord brought about a great victory that day. The troops returned to Eleazar, but only to strip the dead. Next to him was Shammah, son of Agi, the Hararite. When the Philistines banded together at a place where there was a field full of lentils, Israel's troops fled from them. But Shammah took his stand in the middle of the field. He defended it and struck the Philistines down, and the Lord brought about a great victory. During harvest time, 3 of the 30 chief warriors came down to David at the cave of Adullam, while a band of Philistines was encamped in the valley of Rephaim. At that time, David was in the stronghold, and the Philistine garrison was at Bethlehem. David longed for water and said, "Oh, that someone would get me a drink of water from the well near the gate of Bethlehem." So the 3 mighty warriors broke through the Philistine lines, drew water from the well near the gate of Bethlehem, and carried it back to David. But he refused to drink it. Instead, he poured it out before the Lord. "Far be it from me, Lord, to do this," he said. "Is it not the blood of men who went at the risk of their lives?" And David would not drink it. Such were the exploits of the 3 mighty warriors. Abishai, the son of Joab, the brother of Joab, son of Zeruiah, was chief of the 3. He raised a spear against 300 men, whom he killed, and so he became as famous as the 3. Was he not held in greater honour than the 3? He became their commander, even though he was not included among them. Benaiah, son of Jehoiada, a valiant fighter from Kabzeel, performed great exploits. He struck down Moab's 2 mightiest warriors. He also went down into a pit on a snowy day and killed a lion. And he struck down a huge Egyptian. Although the Egyptian had a spear in his hand, Benaiah went against him with a club. He snatched the spear from the Egyptian's hand and killed him with his own spear. Such were the exploits of Benaiah, son of Jehoiada. He too was as famous as the 3 mighty warriors. He was held in greater honour than any of the 30, but he was not included among the 3, and David put him in charge of his bodyguard. Among the 30 were Asahel, the brother of Joab, Elhanan, son of Doda from Bethlehem, Shammah the Haradite, Elika the Haradite, Heles the Paltite, Ira, son of Ikesh from Tekoa, Ebiezer from Anathoth, Sebeki the Hushatite, Mabona Zalman the Ahohite, Mariah the Napatite, Heled, son of Benaiah the Apatite, Ikthai, son of Ribai from Gibeah in Benjamin, Benaiah the Pirathite, Hiddai from the ravines of Gash, Albai-Alban the Arbathite, Asmabeth the Barthumite, Eliabah the Shealbanite, the sons of Jashan, Joshua, son of Shammah the Hararite, Elhiam, son of Sharar the Hararite, Eliphalet, son of Ahasbai the Mealcatite, Eliam, son of Hippotel the Gilonite, Hezro the Carmelite, Perai the Arbite, Igel, son of Nathan from Zohab, the son of Hagri, Zelek the Ammonite, Nahariah the Beratite, the armour-bearer of Joab, son of Jezruah, Ira the Ithrite, Gadab the Ithrite, and Uriah the Hittite. There were 37 in all.
2 Samuel 24. Again, the anger of the Lord burned against Israel. He incited David against them, saying, "Go and take a census of Israel and Judah." So the king said to Joab and the army commanders with him, "Go throughout the tribes of Israel, from Dan to Beersheba, and enroll the fighting men, so that I may know how many there are." But Joab replied to the king, "May the Lord your God multiply the troops 100 times over, and may the eyes of my lord the king see it. But why does my lord the king want to do such a thing?" The king's word, however, overruled Joab and the army commanders, so they left the presence of the king to enroll the fighting men of Israel. After crossing the Jordan, they camped near Aroah, south of the town in the gorge, and then went through Gad and onto Jazer. They went to Gilead and the region of Tahim Shodshi, and on to Danjan, and around toward Sidon. Then they went toward the fortress of Tyre and all the towns of the Hivites and the Canaanites. Finally, they went to the Beersheba in the Negev of Judah. After they had gone through the entire land, they came back to Jerusalem at the end of 9 months and 20 days. Joab reported the number of the fighting men to the king. In Israel, there were 800,000 able-bodied men, who could handle a sword, and in Judah 500,000. David was conscience-stricken after he had counted the fighting men, and he said to the Lord, I have sinned greatly in what I have done. Now, Lord, I beg you, take away the guilt of your servant. I have done a very foolish thing. Before David got up the next morning, the word of the Lord came to Gad, the prophet, David's seer. Go and tell David, this is what the Lord says. I am giving you 3 options. Choose one of them for me to carry out against you. So Gad went to David and said to him, shall there come to you 3 years of famine in your land, or 3 months of fleeing from your enemies while they pursue you, or 3 days of plague in your land? Now then, think it over and decide how I should answer the one who sent me. David said to God, I am in deep distress. Let us not fall into the hands, beg your pardon. I am in deep distress. Let us fall into the hands of the Lord, for his mercy is great. But do not let me fall into human hands. So the Lord sent a plague on Israel from that morning till the end of the time designated. And 70,000 of the people from Dan to Beersheba died. When the angel stretched out his hand to destroy Jerusalem, the Lord relented concerning the disaster and said to the angel who was afflicting the people, enough, withdraw your hand. The angel of the Lord was then at the threshing floor of Araunah, the Jebusite. When David saw the angel who was striking down the people, he said to the Lord, I have sinned. I, the shepherd, have done wrong. These are but sheep. What have they done? Let your hand fall on me and my family. On that day, God went to David and said to him, go up and build an altar to the Lord on the threshing floor of Araunah, the Jebusite. So David went up as the Lord had commanded through God. When Araunah looked up and saw the king and his officials coming toward him, he went out to bow down before the king with his face to the ground. Araunah said, why has the Lord the king come to his servant? To buy your threshing floor, David answered, so I can build an altar to the Lord, that the plague on the people may be stopped. Araunah said to David, let my lord the king take whatever he wishes and offer it up. Here are oxen for the burnt offering, and here are the threshing sledges and ox yokes for the wood. Your Majesty, Araunah gives all this to the king. Araunah also said to him, may the Lord your God accept you. But the king replied to Araunah, no, I insist on paying you for it. I will not sacrifice to the Lord my God burnt offerings that cost me nothing. So David bought the threshing floor and the oxen and paid 50 shekels of silver for them. David built an altar to the Lord there and sacrificed burnt offerings and fellowship offerings. Then the Lord answered his prayer in behalf of the land, and the plague on Israel was stopped.